Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Wednesday. I hope everything is going okay and you're enjoying this weird period of time really between Christmas and New Year's. Always seems to sort of morph into one, never know what day it is, and just waiting for normality to kick back in again after New Year's. But we are only a few days away now from Arsenal versus Brighton, the final game of 2022. What's been a pretty mad 2022 for Arsenal. There's been highs, there's been lows, and there's been real highs. Hopefully Mykhailo Arteta's side can end the year in fine fashion with a win at Brighton, and that would send them into a very tricky looking January with lots of momentum after that very fine comeback win against West Ham. I won't spend too much time talking about the Brighton game. I'll sort of focus on that tomorrow's video, look at some of the key decisions facing Mykhailo Arteta, that sort of thing. Arteta's press conference this week is on Friday. I am technically off at the moment, so I'm not, although I'm still recording videos, I'm not doing my usual stuff with Goal at the moment because I'm off on annual leave, so I won't be at the press conference. I will be at the game though, or hopefully I will be at the game, still waiting to confirm the accreditation for it, but yeah, I won't be at Colney, but watch out for that. It's a late one, 4 o'clock on Friday, that press conference with Mykhailo Arteta. not the best of time for journalists, that, but I'm sure Mykhailo Arteta doesn't really care. So yeah, all the latest from him will be coming at the end of the week, but I'll look tomorrow at the game, look at some of the decisions, like I said, facing him. Certainly depends who's going to play left back. I think that'll be interesting. Zinchenko now back fit as well. We saw him come on, so we'll talk about that. But let's start today. The big news, obviously, surrounding Arsenal at the moment is the move for Mudryk, which I spoke about in yesterday's video, and the bid going in for Arsenal on the day of the West Ham game, which made the West Ham evening at the Emirates very interesting, with that all swirling around. Mykhailo Arteta having his say, or not having his say afterwards, is a better way of describing it. Now, the latest on Mudryk is that, as expected, Shakhtar have rejected Arsenal's opening offer for him, which, as I said, was around the 55 million mark. That's what I've been told anyway. So it's around the sort of 55 million pound mark. That's including add-ons. So it's clearly not going to be 55 million up front. It'll be a different figure sort of initially for Arsenal. But anyway, Shakhtar rejected it. That was expected. We thought that was going to happen. And so now it's going to be a case of what do Arsenal do now. As far as I'm aware, the interest is very much still continuing. It's not that this bid has been rejected and they're going to go away. They are still very much interested in Mudryk, and I think they probably expected this bid to have been rejected. They've been in talks with Shakhtar for some time now. They know the kind of figure that Shakhtar are demanding at this stage, but I'm pretty sure when they put this initial bid in that they were expecting the pushback that they've got from Shakhtar. It's just going to be a case of who blinks first. I'll put this on social media yesterday. It's just really interesting because you got Arsenal on one hand, who I think quite rightly will think their bid was pretty fair, and I think it is when you look at it. Sort of 55 million including add-ons, probably around sort of 35 million, 40 million, up front for a 21-year-old who's never played out of Ukraine. It's not the worst, and it hasn't played many senior games. It's not the worst offer at all. I think Arsenal feel that's a pretty fair offer. But then you look at Shakhtar's point of view, and they continue to do it. They hold up other deals in the recent past for players in his sort of areas. Your Jack Grealish's, which I know is different because there was a release clause. Your Antony, especially that move from Ajax to Manchester United, which ended up being whatever it was, 90, 100 million euros. They'll point at that and say, well, if he's going for that, then this is what Mudryk, who's clearly a hugely talented player, who's just ripped it up in the Champions League this season, has it is worth. So it's going to kind of be a case of who blinks first. Is there room for compromise? Can you compromise in this situation? The fact that both clubs seem to be really far apart in their valuation at the moment is, in a way interesting, in another way potentially worrying for Arsenal. I don't know, because can you have a compromise when you're so far apart in valuation? We'll have to wait and see. But negotiations are ongoing. Talks are ongoing. This hasn't been a case of bid rejected. That's it. Negotiations done by any means. I think Shakhtar know that it might be in the best interest for them to get this deal done in January because the player's desperate for the move. Will his value be higher than this at some point? Who knows? He's had such a brilliant run with that Champions League, those performances in the Champions League. His value is very, very high at the moment. If you don't sell him this window, then his contract's going to start going down with every window that passes. He might be a bit annoyed that he hasn't got his move. Performances might dip. He might not play as well in the Champions League next season if they get a go. So is he at the highest maximum value now? Would it make sense for him to sell now? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. That's all hypothetical, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes on. Like I said, it kind of feels like a who blinks first type thing in this January window. For Arsenal, they want to get it done early. We know that's the ideal situation, but ultimately Shakhtar are the same club. They're the club that have the power at the moment because they're the ones who decide whether a bid is acceptable or not. At the moment, the first bid was not acceptable, so we'll see what Arsenal come back with, but I do expect them to come back with something. Let me know what you guys think. How high should Arsenal go for Mudryk? What point do you think they should potentially walk away and look at other targets? Anything like that, let me know in the comments below. Elsewhere, some interesting things going on. I thought Saka, speaking after the game, was quite interesting on when he was talking about Gabriel Jesus' impact. Now, Jesus is continuing in his recovery. He's always around the club. He was at the game on against West Ham. He went into the changing room against West Ham. You saw him there. I mean, we know he's badly injured. You can see he's still walking around with his knee in a protective brace. It's going to be quite a long time before he's back. But Saka. Jesus is in the leadership group at Arsenal, and I think a lot of people questioned that when he first arrived. Is Jesus really a leader? You've just signed him. How come he's in the three-man leadership group Mikel Arteta's appointed? But I thought this was good telling comments from Saka. He said, of course, they, and he includes Zinchenko in this, the two City boys who came from City, they are both champions, so they bring that belief that we can win every game and go all the way. Every game they are telling us how important it is. Today, Jesus wasn't even on the pitch, but we still all felt his presence. He was speaking to me in the dressing room and the other boys, which is so important. I thought that was just a telling little insight into the sort of impact that Jesus has had at Arsenal. We know what he's done on the pitch. We know the difference he's made to the team on the pitch. I think off it as well, and in the change room, he's so well liked already for a player who's just arrived. He's so well liked. He's got such a big influence on a lot of the younger players. And I think even though he's injured at the moment, we're not going to see him for a fair while. I think he's still going to have a vitally important part to play in and around the place, especially with the younger players who clearly look up to him a lot. So I thought that was pretty good. And I think the fact that Zinchenko's back as well is so key. That winning mentality that Arsenal really need in a really huge month coming up in January when you've got big games. Man United, we saw them turn over at Nottingham Forest yesterday. They're picking up form. They're looking a lot better. Ten Hag clearly getting his ideas in place, and United are looking pretty decent, I think, at the moment. Got that game coming up, the North London derby away at Spurs, where Arsenal have been terrible for ages now. That's coming up. Newcastle, who are flying, the most informed team in the Premier League at the moment, 6 wins in a row coming up. Really huge games for Arsenal, and to have Zinchenko back fit and actually playing and being there, I think it's just vitally important. He's got such a big role to play, I think, Zinchenko. I think he comes back into the team as well. Now he's fit. Obviously, Tierney started in the game against West Ham. I think I'll be very surprised if Zinchenko doesn't start, providing he didn't have any sort of setback from the injury. I'd be really surprised if Zinchenko doesn't start against Brighton on New Year's Eve. And I think he'll be so important. Mikel will be absolutely delighted to have him back ahead of this crucial month, which I think is going to be a defining month when it comes to Arsenal's season, because of those games that I mentioned, because of the teams they're up against, and the fact that they're doing it without Jesus. I think it's going to be such a huge month for Arsenal's season, and just having Zinchenko back around the place and that mentality, that knowing what it takes to get over the line, I think is really important for Arsenal. So that's good to see. Elsewhere, the story doing the rounds, I think it was Jeremy Wilson, I think, in the Telegraph, writing about Arsene Wenger's statue potentially going up as soon as next year now, which is no surprise. Obviously, this is something Arsenal wanted to do for a fair while now, get this statue up of Arsene Wenger, but it's been very difficult. It's been impossible because Arsene Wenger hasn't felt comfortable enough to be around the place and come back to the Emirates. It seems like there's been a thorn in the sort of difficult relationship that Arsenal have had, or Wenger has had, with certain people at Arsenal since his dismissal. The fact that relationship seems to be in the process of being fixed. The fact he now felt comfortable enough to come back for the West Ham game. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this statue happens pretty soon, because, I mean, it needs to. He deserves a statue, in my mind. I still think Ian Wright and David Rocastle absolutely deserve a statue. I can't believe they haven't got one yet at the Emirates. The two of them together, I just think it'd be such a fantastic thing to have around the Emirates. It's a statue that should happen. The celebration after the Rocastle's goal against West Ham in Wright's league debut, when he scored a hat-trick and Rocastle got the other, and Rocky's lying on the floor, or Wrighty's lying on the floor and Rocky's running over to him. I think that'd be a brilliant statue to have. But anyway, I digress slightly. Wenger statue, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that happens very soon, now that this relationship seems to be in the process of being mixed. And look, he deserves it. Absolutely deserves it. So that stadium wouldn't be here without Arsene Wenger. So he deserves to have his statue around the place. And it's another great thing. I loved seeing the pictures on social media yesterday. Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Saka, all of them posting pictures. A party as well with Arsene Wenger in the changing room after the game against West Ham. It must have been a very special moment when he walked in. I mean, a lot of those players had nothing to do with Wenger. They weren't at the club. I think it was only a few. Eddie, of course, Wenger gave his debut to, Granit Xhaka, Mohamed Elneny. But other than that, it's all players who have arrived after Wenger. Even Saka had never even met him before that game against West Ham when he came into the changing room after it. But you could just see the respect they have for him and how special it was. So I thought that was really good to see, and I very much enjoyed looking at those pictures that were doing the rounds yesterday on social media. Okay, that's about it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Please do enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll be back tomorrow where the focus will be very much on that game against Brighton. Who could start, what the big selection issues facing Mykhailo Arteta. So please do join me for that. Thank you very much for watching. Have an excellent day.